folks, Rick Wedell here. I'm the Chief Investment Officer at RFG Advisory. We're going to do something we don't normally do, which I don't normally respond to specific news pieces. But in this case, I've had a couple of clients email me this article and say, hey, do you have any comment here? And so I thought we'd just do a video and address it sort of head on. And this is an article that appeared in Fortune. It's not unlike a bunch of similar articles, but it basically is this argument that, it's got this great catchy headline. It says that the Treasury just declared the United States insolvent and, financial markets missed it. And, here's why you should be terrified, et cetera. And I would just note that at the back of the article, it doesn't tell you anything that you in particular should be doing about that. It more refers to some government policy that the authors feel like we need to accept. I just want to be very clear about this. If there is anything that you get from any of these market commentaries, if you're tuning in to watch them, it is the media is not your friend. Okay? Like if there's just one overarching point that I could make to everyone that I come in contact with, it is that the media is here to scare you because that is how they sell advertising. It is not that they are here to inform you in any way, shape, or form. They almost always have an axe to grind, and particularly publications, like Fortune, Barron's, et cetera. These are they're advertising-driven pieces. They want you to click in. And so they'll write these headlines in a way that's just somewhat silly, but it is an effort to scare you. It gets you to click into the news. Let's just address the points of the article. The first thing that the article mentions is that it's like, hey, the U.S. has all of these liabilities. And then when you go to their government accounting office and you think about the assets of the United States, they're very, very small relative to the liabilities of the United States. And so, we've got all of this debt and only this much in the way of assets. And so our balance sheet is just, we're insolvent based on the balance sheet argument. And fundamentally, that's dumb because the single biggest asset that the U.S. government has is the right to tax the American people. Okay? The right of the government to collect federal income taxes, corporate income taxes, all of these other taxes that it collects, tariff revenue, et cetera. We are the largest economy in the world. And the Fed's asset statement includes things like, well, I own the Capitol building and what's that's worth, or I own an aircraft carrier, what's that worth? Nowhere on that asset list is included the value of the right in perpetuity to place a tax on the U.S. economy, okay? It's nowhere in that balance sheet. So the author of the article is being disingenuous to start with because the balance sheet of the federal government was never intended to be a balance sheet, if you will, of, my assets should actually match up to my liabilities. There's no country on the planet that has their assets match up to their liabilities, with the few exceptions of some sovereign wealth nations, et cetera, et cetera. But there's no real developed country out there that operates in a system where your assets match up to your liabilities. The second point that I would make is these articles try and scare you with, our debt to GDP ratio is at the highest level it's ever been. And yes, that is true, but I just want you guys to look at this chart. It is at the highest level it's ever been, but that's because it's only gradually higher than it was last year. And last year was gradually higher than the year before that. And when we really saw this big spike in debt to GDP ratio was back in 2021 and 2020 coming out of COVID. And so, yes, it is true that 2026 will be the highest year on record. But that's like saying it's less than a 1% increase versus where we were in 2025. And I don't remember the world ending in 2025. So once again, a headline designed to scare you. But if you actually peel back the data and look at it, it's not that big of a deal, at least in the immediate short term. Now, longer term, I think everyone would agree we do need to address the budget deficit. It's not that it's not okay for budgets to run in a deficit. The federal government actually can run a small budget deficit every year. And so long as the size of that budget deficit doesn't outstrip our GDP growth, we're fine. But it is very clear that the government, at least in this point, is spending, that deficit level is actually in excess of our GDP growth. And that is something that we will need to work to address. And both parties have different ideas of how they want to address it, right? The Republicans would like to see us cut spending. The Democrats would like to see us raise taxes. That's a tale as old as time. I think it takes years for that to play out through the government, but it's not as if we have to get this solved this year in order to figure it out. And while the two parties have been able to kick the can down the road, a couple of times, I would just note that if you have any faith in the American electoral process, which I do have, eventually we will find a way to address this and bring our budget deficits back in line. Meanwhile, we're at like 120% debt to GDP. I would just remind you that countries like Japan have had a debt to GDP ratio in excess of 200 for decades, and they are just fine. So once again, this is one of these articles that is designed to scare you. It's designed to make you feel bad. It's designed to generate panic, and it's designed to sell you advertising. But it is not something that is actually reflective of any sort of immediate threat to your portfolio in either the short or even realistically the near medium term. With that, I would just, ask you guys, whenever you see one of these headlines, just take a step back and think about are they trying to sell me something? What's the axe to grind? What's the advertisements being sold, et cetera? Because most of the time, these articles really aren't about information. They're about advertising. With that, as always, if you have a question, please feel free to reach out to myself or to your advisor. I look forward to talking to you again soon, and I hope you're having a great day.